Oathbreakers, why have ye come? And a voice was heard out of the night that answered him, as if from far away, to fulfill our oath and have peace. Then Aragorn said, the hour is come at last. Now I go to Pelegir upon Anduin, and ye shall come after me. And when all this land is clean of the servants of Sauron, I will hold the oath fulfilled, and ye shall have peace and depart forever. For I am Elisar, Isildur's heir of Gondor.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we're reading Book 5, Chapter 2, The Passing of the Grey Company. My name is Logan.
And my name is Zach.
It's the Return of the King. That's the book. That's the volume.
That's right.
And the king is...
Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Elisar, Isildur's heir.
If you didn't know who it was before, today, now you know.
This really is the moment that he
becomes
fully,
him.
Yeah. He's really not Strider from here on out. He's fulfilling this role that he's always had. You know, he's not a hesitant leader, you know, in this book. He is always kind of prepared to fulfill this destiny, this role that was laid out for him. I think we'll probably get into kind of this theme of fate and prophecy and all that. But I mean, even the way that he speaks in this chapter is so different. We've kind of marked a changing of tone several times in this book, but Aragorn is Aragorn here. He is Elisar. He is the heir of Isildur, the rightful king of Arnor and Gondor. And he is living into that fully. I mean, even just the way he speaks is so much more high and noble. You know, whenever a character starts speaking in ye's and these and thous and arts and shalls, you know, it's very it's indicative of a change in the character, but I think also a change in the way that Tolkien is writing. Whenever he adopts this kind of higher style. Yeah,
he's such a great stylist. I mean, that's how he can just communicate so much through the tone of the character that he's writing. It's pretty awesome. Aragorn's got his boys with him now.
Man,
his boys
he got his horse.
His boys from the north and his magical horse.
Oh, yeah.
We get a little bit of horse love in this chapter from Tolkien.
Man, and a little pony action too. Remember the name of the pony?
Striga.
Stibba.
Oh, I was close. Stibba.
Which is such a great name for a pony.
It is.
We were talking before we started recording. There's a few themes that kind of play out in this chapter that I really want us to hit on. Lots of oaths taking place in this chapter.
Indeed.
Merry's oath to Theoden, which I think we can hold in contrast to just last chapter, Pippin's oath to Denethor.
Yeah, definitely.
They're both kind of entering into this elevated state where they're, you know, kneeling and offering their ancient swords to their masters and becoming knights. You know, it's pretty cool.
It's interesting how much more formal the process is in Minas Tirith than it is for Theoden.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, because Pippin, he gives this very almost religious oath that he repeats back to Denethor, and the ramifications of breaking the oath is you know, if you break this oath, then your life is forfeit, and we will enforce that. In Rohan, it's you know, you'll be a father to me.
Yeah, for a little while, Theoden says.
You know, so there's the theme of oaths and oath breaking and the ramifications of that span over millennia. Mm-hmm. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about the oath breakers, but oath breaking in Tolkien is a catastrophic choice that has real consequences. But there's also the flip side of that is sort of the theme of redemption. You know, redemption is always available in Tolkien, even
when you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. What an interesting theological move that is. Even when you're dead, your
Yeah.
disquiet can still be, I don't know, somehow rectified.
You can find rest through the charity of someone who, Aragorn is brought to the paths of the dead by need. He doesn't have any other choice, but there's a charity in his giving rest to these oath breakers who betrayed, his family, like what, like, is it like 3,000 years ago? I mean, it's a
Yeah,
long,
long
long
time
time
ago.
ago, but he doesn't like hold them longer than he needs to. There's this like logistical question of like, why doesn't he just like, he uses them to fight the Corsairs of Umbar. Why doesn't he just take them to battle in the Pelennor Fields,
Yeah.
which happens in the movies?
Yeah, I know why they did that in the movies. I think it's kind of goofy. I think there's a lot of things about that movie that are pretty goofy, but I think the interesting piece here in the chapter regarding the ghosts, wraiths is that it's at Aragorn's need, right? Because we have a lot of about Aragorn's will in this chapter too. But it's not as if he goes and, musters this host of wraiths to accomplish something that's his like design,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's about the like deep need that he has for this because he doesn't have any other force available to him.
No.
And so for him to continue on into Pelennor Fields
Yeah.
would be different, right? Because there's already a force there in Pelennor Fields, or there will be, right?
The muster of Rohan. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it wouldn't really it wouldn't be right. It's kind of it's almost like a proportional response or something like that. That's kind of how I think of it in modern terms,
Sure. Sure.
But that's not that doesn't map on exactly right. But I just found the real stark highlighting of his need was really interesting to me in this reading.
And in this chapter, he also reveals himself to Sauron in the
Yeah.
Palantir. And, there's lots of dialogue that we'll get into when we get to that section about how he has claim to the Palantir more so than Sauron.
He sort of says it belongs to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. He's like, the claim is undoubtable.
yeah.
He's like, my ability may be called into question, but not my claim to this thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar to how he could wield the ring. He could claim it as like an heirloom of his house, and he has the strength of will to wield it. He chooses not to because of his nobility and because of his wisdom. If anybody on earth has claim to it, it's him, other than Sauron. But he shows himself to Sauron, and he shows his sword to Sauron. And he shows the reforging of the sword. And, kind of in line with what we were just talking about with fate, among the Dunedain, among like the heirs of Isildur that kind of live on through the Rangers in the North, there is another prophecy, which is that the sword of Isildur will be reforged when the ring is found again. So it's almost like there's a set of circumstances that need to happen in order for the sword to be reforged. And there's also a set of circumstances that need to happen in order for Aragorn to be able to marry Arwen. Elrond says, like, the only way you can marry my daughter is if you become the king of the combined kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor again. If you reunite Middle Earth under a king. And so, when Arwen sends her standard, that's almost like an engagement ring. It's like, hey, like, what we were told needs to happen in order for us to be married is unfurling. It's happening right now. There's a convergence of these requirements that are happening in this moment in history. So either we're going to be married or the world will end. And either way, you're going to be at the front line of this.
I was going to say, it feels like tributaries kind of coming together, like all these streams coming together into like one river that like kind of, that's what compels Aragorn. Eventually enough things kind of get woven together that he can step fully into his kingship.
Like way back in the Faramir chapter, when Faramir is talking to Frodo about Strider, and when he's saying like, the sword has been reforged, and Aragorn is the heir of Isildur, and the kingship is his. Essentially, Faramir says, well, there will need to be proofs established,
Right.
and him revealing himself to Sauron, wielding the Palantir, striving with the will of Sauron and surviving,
Yeah.
and him calling the Oathbreakers and the Oathbreakers accepting his call.
Yeah, that's big.
That proves that he is the heir of Isildur. That is
Right.
a proof. They wouldn't answer that call from anybody else. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, I think we're ready to jump into the chapter.
So we pick up in chapter 2 in the same place that chapter 1 started, just from a different perspective. We had the arrival of the Nazgul, sort of searching for Pippin, and Gandalf, scoops up Pippin and starts riding towards Minas Tirith. That's what we got last chapter. This chapter, it's like what's left of the company and the men of Rohan, under the king. If you remember, like we talked about how in the chapter after Helm's Deep, Gandalf kind of lays out his like master plan. Everything that Gandalf was doing, all the riding around all of Rohan to gather people, this was all so that they could survive Helm's Deep and prepare to march on Minas Tirith, to kind of come to the aid of Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
So everything that Gandalf is doing is going towards that goal. And so, a little wrench was thrown in the plan because Pippin revealed himself to Sauron and the Nazgul came. But that's still what the Rohirrim are doing. They're following Gandalf's orders, essentially. But Aragorn says, "For myself, it is dark before me. I must go down also to Minas Tirith, but I do not yet see the road. An hour long prepared approaches." So he is not going to follow the Rohirrim through these mountain paths to get back to Edoras. He's going to take a different road. And we learned slowly over this chapter that road is the paths of the dead.
I really love, I just wanted to touch real quick on this. He's talking about what he's going to do and what Rohan's going to do. And then he says, the riders of Rohan will go down to Minas Tirith, but for myself and any that will go with me. And Legolas interrupts him and says, "I for one," cried Legolas. "And Gimli with him," said the dwarf.
Yes. He doesn't even let him finish.
That's so sweet that they're like, "We're with you," And then Mary, of course, is like, "Don't leave me behind."
Yeah, he's like, "I'm with you too," but he can't go on this road.
And then he compares himself to baggage, which is a pretty standard Hobbit way to think of yourself when you're around all these big people, I think.
Yeah. He's like, here I am back being a sack of potatoes they have to lug around everywhere they go.
Exactly.
And this is getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but Theoden does not treat him that way.
Absolutely not. No.
He makes him his squire, and he's like, "You'll ride next to me on this like sick ass pony named Stibba."
And the Dunedain don't see them that way either.
No.
They see the hobbits as in need of protection, but as like an essentially honorable and like worthy people.
Absolutely.
Which I think is so cool, because these rangers come across as like real badasses in this chapter.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Like they're dangerous people, and for those guys to be like, well, we actually like these little guys,
it's our duty, but also our honor to protect
It's our
them.
honor to protect them. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah. So speaking of, they're standing there. It's, it's dark. It's still nighttime, and riders approach, and, they tell them to halt, and they say like, "Who rides in Rohan?" Very similar to what was said to the three hunters when they come across Éomer the first time. And it says the pursuers brought their steeds to a sudden halt. A silence followed, and then in the moonlight, a horseman could be seen dismounting and walking slowly forward. And he's like, "Did you say Rohan? Good, because that's what we've been looking for." Yeah, these guys have never been here before. These guys they live in the north. They would not have had any reason to come down this far. He says, "This is a glad word. We seek that land in haste from long afar." And Éomer says, "You have found it. When you crossed the fords yonder, you entered it. But it is the realm of Theoden the king. None ride here save by his leave. Who are you, and what is your haste? And he responds, Halbarad Dunedan, ranger of the north am I. We seek one Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and we heard that he was in Rohan. And Aragorn says, you found him. It's almost like the reuniters, like, you son of a bitch, you know, like,
It's
like
so great.
you know.
Yeah.
And they embrace. He says, of all joys, this is the least expected. Okay, well, here's a question. Who is it that tells the Rangers to come and find Aragorn? I was a little unclear about that.
Galadriel.
So is the idea that she like kind of summoned them like through like telepathy? Like how does she
I guess
like she's far away from them too.
Yeah, I guess I figured that as soon as they left, maybe she sent a messenger up there. But
well, it says right here, the answer to summons. Word came to Rivendell, they say. Aragorn has need of his kindred. Let the Dunedain ride to him in Rohan. So my sense is that Galadriel finds a way to communicate this to Elrond.
Yeah, and they can probably talk to each other long distance, right?
Yeah, I think so, because they're both ring bearers.
Yeah.
It's possible maybe she sent messengers.
Yeah.
But then, Elrond's sons come as sort of his mouthpiece here. So perhaps
maybe they went out and
got the word to them and then rode down real fast.
And it's only like, what is it, like 35 guys or 30 guys
30.
or something like that?
30. Yeah.
And so I guess I never noticed that before. I sort of assumed it was like 200 dudes, but I think the fact that it's just these 35 guys also shows how spread out the Dunedain are.
Yeah.
Dunedain are. It's not like they're like living in a big city somewhere, a bunch of bros at a frat house or whatever.
Yeah, they're just like out camping.
Yeah, exactly.
Aragorn says, I did not summon you, save only in wish. My thoughts have often turned to you and seldom more than tonight. Yet I've sent no word. But come, all such matters must wait. You find us riding in haste and danger. Ride with us now, if the king will give you his leave.
Yeah.
So Theoden, of course, is like, he's fired up by this. He's like, oh, I give you my leave. He says, it is well. If these kinsmen be in any way like to yourself, my lord Aragorn, 30 such knights will be a strength that cannot be counted by heads.
What a great compliment.
It's like, yeah, if they're half as good as you, then this is more than a number could count.
Absolutely.
For its benefit to us.
So great.
So we have the sons of Elrond, who we mentioned earlier, Elladan and Elrohir, and these guys were mentioned back in the Council of Elrond. Do you remember that they were kind of like after the Council of Elrond, they kind of go about like ranging, kind of preparing the way, looking to make sure that the paths are cleared for these guys to depart from Rivendell?
Did they almost get sent on the quest
I think they
before they send Merry and Pippin?
I think that they were definitely in consideration.
Yeah, you would think so.
But they decided to have like a representation from the kindreds and to have it be 9, to be like an answer to the 9 Nazgul.
Yeah.
And, Merry and Pippin kind of take the last 2 slots. But I think these guys would have probably been like kind of the first round draft pick for.
Yeah, if you were drafting, this is who you would choose.
These guys, or of course, Glorfindel.
Glorfindel, yeah.
Elrohir says, I bring word to you from my father. The days are short. If thou art in haste, remember the paths of the dead. And Aragorn responds, always my days have seemed to me too short to achieve my desire. But great indeed will be my haste ere I take that road. And Elrohir responds, that will be seen. But let us speak no more of these things upon the open road. So when he says my desire, do you think that he's talking about becoming the king, or do you think he's talking about marrying Arwen?
I mean, the word desire is pretty strong. Although I think the two things are definitely tied together in his.
They're wound up, yeah.
Mind and the way that marriage works in this kind of romantic world. They're not going to elope. He really does have to do the impossible thing of uniting the kingdoms in order for the marriage to happen. But I still think I think it makes sense from Tolkien's perspective that the desire is like the desire to marry Arwen is stronger, but is like an expression, right, of
Yeah.
the greater whatever vocation of his, kingly whatever.
Yeah, his fate. Yeah.
Right. And so, and I think I think the message he gets from Arwen, you have to imagine it being really heartening for Aragorn.
Yeah.
He hasn't heard from her. We never really get to see them talk to each other.
I don't even know if they like do they talk to each other?
Do they even
when
have
they're in Rivendell?
I don't think they even have I don't think they even have a
Have they had a conversation up to this point that we've
conversation
seen?
in the book.
No, I mean, of course they have, yeah, and we learn a little bit more about it in the appendix, but
right, you imagine
we've never heard them speak,
steal away, and whisper whatever sweet nothings to each other. But so to get that message here really feels, well, I don't know. Everybody's all over Aragorn in this in this chapter because we have all the Éowyn stuff too, and
Éowyn's down bad too. Yeah,
it's kind of important for him to get a message from Arwen, probably. It's like, oh yeah, I got my girlfriend back there while Éowyn's throwing herself at me.
I mean, when we get to the Éowyn stuff, I think there's some subtext to be read about maybe what Tolkien's original plan for Éowyn and Aragorn is.
Yeah,
I think there's
we should definitely talk about that.
But let's talk about the message that she sends. So Halbarad is holding this staff. So it's a tall staff, as if it were a standard, close furled in a black cloth, bound about with many thongs. And he says to Aragorn, "It is a gift I bring to you from the Lady of Rivendell," which is Arwen. "She wrought it in secret, and long was the making, but she also sends word to you. The days are now short. Either our hope cometh, or all hopes end. Therefore I send thee what I have made for thee. Farewell, Elfstone." I mean, talk about the these and the thous. I mean, this is like, this is like high noble language. The reason why he uses these and thous is because they're archaic. People don't use that anymore.
Yeah.
It has this like sense of like ancientry and high nobility, like only nobles speak this way. And it's not the way that Aragorn usually speaks.
No. But
you get the sense this is how he speaks to Arwen. Like this is this Arwen is incredibly old. And I talk about age gap relationships. Am I right?
She's like 3,000 years old or something like that, right? And he's 85.
Centuries older than Aragorn.
Yeah.
So this, what's the word? Standard that she.
Yeah, I think it's a standard
that she makes for him. We don't see it. We don't even see it in this chapter because it's unfurled in the dark.
Yeah, right.
We learn later that it is his like sigil, which is the crown with 7 stars above it and the tree with 7 stars above it. Mm-hmm. And that was the sigil of the Northern Kingdom, Arnor, and the Southern Kingdom, Gondor. So this is him claiming, I am the rightful king of both of these ancient kingdoms. Aragorn says, "Now I know what you bear. Bear it still for me a while." It says he looks away to the north under the great stars and then falls silent and speaks no more while the night's journey lasted. So it's him like kind of surveying his kingdom. He's like, yeah, now is the time. Arwen has prepared this for me long. And she's saying, I just think that line, either our hope cometh or all hopes end. So saying like, that desire, he's like, my desire, either their wedding happens or the world ends, but either way, Aragorn has to live up to his fate. So they arrive at the Hornburg. They're back to Helm's Deep, baby.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only been 3 days since the Battle of Helm's Deep. Did you catch that?
No, that's interesting. Feels like a lot longer.
Gimli says to Merry, so Merry's sleeping.
Come,
Gimli,
Master Sluggard.
Yeah, he kicks him awake. He's like, take a look at this place. He's like, okay, like you're sleeping. There are these glittering caves, like right down the path here. Like you're really missing out. Now's not the time to sleep. So Gimli is like still down bad for these glittering caves. But he says there was a battle here 3 nights ago, and here Legolas and I played a game that I won by only a single orc. Come and see how it was. And there are caves, Merry, caves of wonder. Shall we visit them, Legolas? What do you think? So he's got this like almost like giddy, like childlike energy. This, I think, is a vote in favor of your theory that Legolas let him win.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's like, and I won by a single orc. Just one. Isn't that right, Legolas? Legolas is like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he says, like, basically, like, we don't have time. And he goes, do not spoil the wonder with haste. That's great advice from Legolas.
Mary Mrs. Pippin. That comes up a couple times in this chapter.
And he feels like a burden. It's right
Yeah.
up there with baggage, right? Like he feels like a burden, like baggage. He says, well, everybody was making plans for speed in a business that he did not fully understand.
We get a cool detail from Gimli, where he's describing the Dunedain.
Yeah.
And says, these are a strange company, these newcomers. Stout men and lordly they are, and the riders of Rohan look almost like boys beside them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the riders of Rohan are not, they're not some like...
No, they're like this formidable fighting force.
Yeah, they're not just like farmers or whatever, but the Rangers are definitely, I just, again, come back. They're just these like badass guys.
These grim men of face, worn like weathered rocks for the most part, even as Aragorn himself, and they are silent. So they're like stoic too. They like
something about how stoic they are is really cool.
No, but Merry, he asks like, "Hey, where's Aragorn?" And Legolas is like, "He's in a high chamber of the burg. He has neither rested nor slept, I think. He went thither some hours ago, saying that he must take thought, and only his kinsman Halbarad went with him. But some dark doubt or care sits on him. So this is, setting up for the fact that he has striven with the Dark Lord looking into the Palantir. So we already kind of talked about this part, but they kind of speculate on how word got to the sons of Elrond, and then, like, I guess through them to the Dunedain, or Dunedain. And Legolas pretty explicitly says that it was Galadriel. He says, "Did she not speak through Gandalf of the ride of the Grey Company from the north?" Gimli, and this is interesting. I've kind of marked to talk about this for a little bit. So Gimli says, like, yeah, Galadriel essentially set the pieces in motion to call Aragorn's men from the north down. And Gimli responds to him saying that. He says, "Yes, you have it. The Lady of the Wood. She read many hearts and desires. Now, why did we not wish for some of our own kinsfolk, Legolas?" "I do not think that they would come," he answered. "They have no need to ride to war. War already marches on their own lands." And I wanted to point this out because that's a question that kind of comes up a lot, even among people who have read Lord of the Rings many times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why don't the elves and the dwarves come to help? Like, why does it fall on men? And Legolas answers, he's like, because they already have war. The dwarves in the north are already fighting battles with Sauron.
Right.
And the elves, for their part, have been fighting this war for millennia.
Yeah, forever. And we know Mirkwood is, a place that's kind of, there's like, it's not just orcs, it's like monsters and
like
stuff.
spiders. Yeah. And the necromancer, which was Sauron himself.
Right.
And so they're not participating in this battle. It's just their priorities are different. For the dwarves, they're like literally in the middle of a battle with Sauron in the north.
Yeah.
But the elves have been fighting this battle, and they're not long for Middle Earth. They're not going to be here for very long. It's not their battle to fight. It really falls on men. It's their responsibility. But I thought that's interesting that, Tolkien, he anticipated every possible question. I think that this is put in here specifically to answer the question, why are the dwarves? Yeah, where are the elves and where are the dwarves? Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think it bears repeating that, like, the Battle of Pelennor Fields is a battle to defend Minas Tirith. Right? Like, it's not an attack on Mordor. And they do eventually go to the gate and make an attack, but I also think, like, for Boromir, right? Like, from Boromir's perspective, he is trying to protect his city in Minas Tirith. And so for, the elves of Mirkwood or the dwarves of the north, they're striving to protect their kingdoms, their places, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
And I think that's different than the way we kind of think about
Yeah.
war, because war is so global for us.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe we would feel differently or think differently about it if we weren't in such a globalized world. I also think there's a real emphasis on who is called. And in this case, everyone who is called to defend Minas Tirith answers the call.
Yeah.
Rohan is called.
Yeah.
These other sort of city states that are kind of part of Gondor are called, and they
The
send,
fiefs. Yeah.
right? And so anyone who's called answers the call. And I think that if the elves of Mirkwood or the dwarves were called,
If they had a way to call them. Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, they're
right?
so far away that
Yeah.
like
It's
there's
not,
not a
yeah, it's
no,
not feasible, right? But even
no.
if they were called, you kind of imagine like the dwarves saying like, well, we could send, you know, my son Gimli and
Yeah.
and 5 guys, right? Like,
Yeah. That's
which
basically what he
is,
did. Yeah.
and I mean, that's essentially, they did send. Legolas was sent. Gimli was sent. They did answer
Right.
the call of Elrond, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I don't know. I just think it's more complicated than like you just like select all your units in Mirkwood and like click like
Yeah. Click.
Gondor, and
Yeah.
they just
Enter.
walk down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like playing Civilization or World of Warcraft or something like that.
I knew you were going to bring up Civilization. Yeah. Yeah.
It just isn't like that. You know, it's actually, you know, it's part of that logistical kind of realism that Tolkien always brings into his, even though obviously we have like armies of the dead in this chapter too, but it's balanced by the realism that Tolkien kind of brings into everything that he writes.
And while they're at Helm's Deep, this is the moment that Merry gets the chance to do what Theoden promised, which is to have him sit with him and talk to him about his home country. And I think you're right to point out that this is a very different exchange than Denethor, who sees Pippin as a tool, a means of information, a way of manipulating information that Gandalf would be unwilling to give him. But Theoden, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like an act of grace. It feels like an act of welcome, a recognition of Mary's importance. And he invites him to come and sit with him for a while, and he asks Amir to provide him with armor.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if Amir would answer this kindly if not for the fact that he's sitting in front of his uncle.
Yeah.
But he's like, there are no great weapon hoards here, Lord. Maybe a light helm might be found to fit him, but we have no mail or sword for one of his stature.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not saying like he doesn't deserve it. It's just saying like, this really isn't a place that has a lot of gear. This isn't the Golden Hall. But also, he's just a little too small for any of the things that we do have. But Merry says, I have a sword. And it says, he draws from its black sheath his small, bright blade. Filled suddenly with love for this old man, he knelt on one knee and took his hand and kissed it. May I lay the sword of Meriadoc of the Shire on your lap, Theoden King. Receive my service, if you will. And Theoden responds, gladly will I take it. Rise now, Meriadoc, Esquire of Rohan, of the house of Meduselt. Take your sword and bear it to good fortune.
As a father you shall be to me, said Merry. And Theoden says, for a little while. I think Theoden always expects to die in this
Yeah,
war.
he knows. Yeah, he knows.
And I think everybody kind of expects to die, probably. It's like a doom. But that one really landed on me in this reading.
He's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
And, it's the rest of the book. It's just banger after banger. It's bangers all the way down to the end.
Yeah.
But I'm so fired up for the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Like that is just that's like the pinnacle of the whole book for me.
It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
So he spends time eating with Merry, and Theoden is essentially like, hey, we got to get ready to ride. we're going to take these mountain paths. So, we'll get Stibba for Mary. Mary, you can ride next to me and we can have all the conversation that we want. The little Stibba's going to be able to, handle these mountain paths just as quickly as our great war horses. But he says essentially like, hey, someone call Aragorn. He's not been with us. He's not eaten with us. Doesn't seem like he's rested, but we need to get going. So somebody come and call him. And Mary, when he sees Aragorn, it says that he's startled at the change that he saw in him, as if in one night many years had fallen on his head. Grim was his face, gray-hued and weary. And he says, I am troubled in mind, Lord, as he stands by the king's horse. I have heard strange words, and I see new perils far off. I have labored long in thought, and now I fear I must change my purpose. Tell me, Theoden, you ride now to Dunharrow. How long ere will you come there? And he says that it will take 3 days. So this is, I think, the moment that Aragorn like fully chooses. He says, for me, the time of stealth has passed. I will ride east by the swiftest way, and I will take the paths of the dead.
The time of stealth has passed is interesting because that's kind of his whole Strider mentality, is to be stealthy.
His whole life. Yeah.
To kind of do things anonymously.
Yeah. So I wanted to point out that Aragorn says, I see new perils far off. So he's striven in the Palantir, and we're about to get a little bit more dialogue about that exchange that he has with Sauron, and like how he reveals his sword to him, reveals himself like in a guise differently than what you see now, which is really fascinating. But he sees in the Palantir the fact that the Corsairs of Umbar are coming and that they're sort of like laying devastation along the waterways in Gondor, making their way towards Minas Tirith. And that's exactly what Denethor sees.
Yeah, right.
And that's what you almost imagine it's kind of like what Frodo sees upon Amon Hen, like when he is just like completely overwhelmed by the forces that he sees gathering to Sauron's side. And he wonders like how could we possibly like do this thing? Denethor sees that and he is filled with despair. Aragorn sees it and he recognizes the peril, but it's a call to action for him, whereas for Denethor it's a call to retreat.
Exactly.
And so I think that shows a lot about Aragorn's character. And he says essentially like, I have to ride to meet this challenge, even if I ride alone. Even if my 30 men don't come with me, or Legolas or Gimli, even if the dead don't answer the summons, I'm going to go and I'm going to face them to the best of my ability alone. Theoden and Éomer are just aghast that he would consider going to the paths of the dead. And that's the moment where they say like, hey, like if that's where you're going, unfortunately, we're not going to go with you.
Yeah. Well, and they only know it as this off limits place.
Yeah.
Right. They only know it as a place where people go and die.
The paths of the dead. Yeah, it's not got the best PR.
Right. Whereas like Aragorn understands it as it's a path that he may need to use. I feel like it's probably something he's kind of like understood since he was a child.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere along the line told him like, you're the guy in this prophecy.
Yeah.
Maybe,
yeah.
right? Like there's a possibility that you're the guy in this prophecy. So you need to understand where it is. And he says that he says to Éowyn, I was in the land before you were born to grace it, which is such a beautiful.
What I've walked these lands before you were born.
I mean, no wonder she falls in love with him. Like he says these kind of things to her. Like it's just like, man. Wow.
I know.
But he, he's like checked it out. He hasn't gone in, but he like knows where he's going, right? Because at some point he came down to Rohan and sort of like served in the army or something, with
Theoden's father, which I guess would make Éowyn's grandfather.
I guess so. That's funny.
He's like her grandfather's friend. That's weird.
That's weird. But it's literally it's nice because it does make what they're going to do scary. And there's a reason Gimli is scared.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Right. And the Rangers are not really scared of anything, but they're kind of yoked to the will of Aragorn. But
Yeah, they follow him.
Theoden and Eowyn only know it as this
Place of death, yeah.
yeah, terrible, like horrible place where nobody goes. You know, she doesn't even like when she says like, well, there are no paths to the north or the south or the, you know, to or to
Everyone's
the
like, there's
east.
one. Yeah.
And he's like, well, actually, like you like left out a cardinal direction.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't even occur to her as a possibility that you would even like
Go
consider.
through these mountain paths, yeah.
So yeah, it kind of makes the choice that much more, I don't know, epic or something.
Theoden says, "You will do as you will, my lord Aragorn. It is your doom, maybe, to tread strange paths that others dare not. This parting grieves me, and my strength is lessened by it. But now I must take the mountain roads and delay no longer. Farewell." So I think it's interesting that Theoden like recognizes that he doesn't have the authority to command Aragorn to follow to the muster of Rohan.
Yeah.
He recognizes it like, hey, you're my king too. Like when you like, I'll still be a king, but you know, I'm your vassal.
That's probably one of the proofs of
Yeah.
kingship too, is that another king recognizes you as king.
Yeah, that's true. I think Aragorn's exchange with Éomer is beautiful. He says, "I say to you, Éomer, that in battle we may yet meet again, though all the hosts of Mordor should stand between." So Éomer's like, hey, I really wish that we would be like, you know, like
Side by
crossing
side.
swords here, you know. We'd ride to war together. Where he's like, but if you go to the paths of the dead, then I'll never see you again under the sun. But Aragorn says to these, you know, horse lords, farewell, ride unto great renown. And he says goodbye to Merry. He says, I leave you in good hands, better than we hoped when we hunted the orcs to Fangorn. Legolas and Gimli will still hunt with me, I hope, but we shall not forget you. And all that Merry can muster to say is goodbye.
Yeah. It says more than ever he missed the unquenchable cheerfulness of Pippin.
Yeah.
If Pippin would have something to say.
Yeah. Pippin would have something to say. Yes.
Because he's like too stupid not to like hold his tongue.
Yeah. Paths of the dead. What the heck is that?
Yeah, right.
Aragorn's parting words as they're leaving with Halbrand, you know, they're watching kind of behind their shoulder. He says, there go three that I love, and the smallest, not the least. So he's like, I love Éomer, I love Theoden, but man, Merry, I really love that guy. He says, he knows not to what end he rides, yet if he knew, he still would go on. So he's like, he doesn't know how bad it's about to get, but even if he did, he would still do it.
Yeah, and that's where Halbarad says, a little people, but of great worth are the Shire folk. Little do they know of our long labor for their safekeeping of their borders, and yet I grudge it not.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And Aragorn says, and now our fates are woven together. And they like super are, because Merry, I mean, Merry is like such a hero in this book. And obviously the fate of everybody is tied to, you know, Frodo and Sam in Mordor. Yeah, so after Theoden and the riders depart, they go back into the burg. And Aragorn is hungry. He says, I got to eat something.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, I've been busy wrestling with the Dark Lord, and I haven't had time to eat.
So they go back into the hall, and everybody just kind of watches Aragorn eat for a little while.
Yeah.
And then Legolas is like, come on, like, speak and be comforted and shake off this shadow. Why are you so depressed? What have you been doing?
Speak and be comforted is an interesting, like, command, isn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting. Don't just hold it to yourself.
Yeah, like, let us know what's been going on, and
what's
you'll feel better.
On? Yeah, you'll feel better. It's kind of like we've touched on, you know, why don't you sleep on it? It's like, why don't you talk about it? Because you might feel better.
Did you notice this line? He says, a struggle somewhat grimmer for my part than the Battle of the Hornburg.
Yeah, like the battle was not as bad as like staring into this, you know, stone with Satan on the other end.
Isn't that crazy?
Of the line. Yeah.
That's such an interesting claim. I don't think I've noticed that before.
Right. I have looked in the stone of Orthanc, my friends, And Gimli's like, "You've looked at that accursed stone of wizardry? Did you say aught to him?" Even Gandalf feared that encounter. Everyone's like, "Yeah, well, I'm not Gandalf. I'm Aragorn."
You forget to whom you speak, he says sternly.
Yeah. "I am the lawful master of the stone, and I had both the right and the strength to use it, or so I judged. The right cannot be doubted. The strength was enough, barely." I love that Aragorn is, even though he's this, lordly prince of whatever nobility, and he understands the kind of right of his ownership, he's still a man, and he recognizes that himself, that he's a man. He's not.
And he's not a wizard either. Gimli kind of misspeaks here. I think partly the reason why he responds so sternly is that these are not stones of wizardry. These were made by his ancestors in the deep past.
Right.
And he's like, I have a claim to this. I'm the lawful master of this stone.
And here's where the will of Aragorn starts to come into the story. He says, well, first it says he drew a deep breath. And this is kind of a long, kind of like soliloquy right here.
Yeah, why don't you read it?
"It was a bitter struggle, and the weariness is slow to pass. I spoke no word to him, and in the end I wrenched the stone to my own will. That alone he will find hard to endure. Yes, Master Gimli, he saw me, but in other guise than you see me here. And if that will aid him, then I have done ill, but I don't think so. To know that I have lived and walked the earth was a blow to his heart, I deem, for he knew it not until now. But Sauron has not forgotten Isildur and the sword of Elendil."
He says that he showed the sword reforged to him. He says he is not so mighty yet that he is above fear. Nay, doubt ever gnaws him. So he's got like doubt. He's insecure, and seeing that blade that cut the ring from his finger.
Yeah, last time.
And recognizing him as like Isildur's heir, he's like, when he says that he appears in guise other than when he appears now, like what do you take that to mean?
I mean, did he put on all of his like fancy king gear? Is that what we're supposed to take from this? Or
I don't think so. I think he must have like shown him like in the same way that Gandalf every once in a while kind of reveals
his full spiritual power.
His full spiritual power, yeah. Or the way that the Nazgul kind of shine brightly in the kind of wraith world. That
you couldn't help but be seen kind of as who you fully are in the Palantir, maybe.
Like that he just shines brightly in that like that realm. Yeah, just fascinating stuff. This is one of my favorite quotes in the entire book. Gimli says, "But he wields great dominion nonetheless, and now he will strike more swiftly." And Aragorn says, "The hasty stroke off goes astray. We must press our enemy and no longer wait upon him for the move." So that's exactly what Denethor is doing. He's sitting, waiting for the blow, right? And Aragorn is like, we need to force him to strike. And because it's hasty, it'll go wide.
Right.
And that's our chance to have an opening to go in and strike ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The hasty stroke goes off astray. That's right up there with like evil often undoes itself. And that's kind of, that's kind of the theme of the book, I think, that victory comes from the missteps of evil as much as it does from the courage and the action of good.
Yeah, right. I would just say this is where Aragorn reveals that he could see that there's an unlooked for peril coming from the south that will draw off, it's going to draw off defense from Minas Tirith if it isn't countered. And Gimli says, well, it's not going to be countered because there's like 34 of us or something, right?
Right.
And so Aragorn says, no, I need to go myself and counter this. And the way that I'm going to do that is take the Pass of the Dead. Gimli, doesn't think this sounds like a great idea, which I think is totally natural. But then Aragorn says, this road has never been used since the coming of the Rohirrim, for it's closed to them. But in this dark hour, the heir of Isildur may use it if he dare. Listen, This is the word that the sons of Elrond bring to me from their father in Rivendell. Bid Aragorn remember the words of the seer and the paths of the dead. And
Yeah.
Legolas is like, what is that? And so then
Yeah.
that's when we get this song.
And I guess Aragorn is reciting this prophecy. So this is something that he has memorized. It goes, the dead awaken, for the hour is come for the oath breakers. At the stone of Erech they shall stand again, and hear their horn in the hills ringing. It says, from the north shall he come, need shall drive him. He shall pass the door to the paths of the dead.
It was just funny as I was reading this, I was like, I guess I had forgotten that there's a horn. So I was like, do they have a horn?
Yeah, they give him a horn, yeah.
But of course the sons of Elrond, I think it was the sons of Elrond, have a silver horn, or he gives them a silver horn, or somebody has a horn.
Halbered does, yeah. We're about to get there in a minute. Somebody hands him a horn and he blows it, yeah.
And he blows it. So like they were like ready with this horn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that again, that confirms for me that like Aragorn has thought about this before. And maybe you always have a horn, you know, when you go into battle to like muster troops and stuff like that. I don't know how it all works, but
I don't know. It wasn't mentioned up to this point, so I wish Boromir was there to blow it, man.
I know, exactly. I know, me too.
That would have been really cool if Boromir's like, here, take my horn, bud.
Right. But here again, like Gimli says, I don't really understand what this means.
Yeah, but I'll go with you.
But Aragorn says, well, this is the way I'm going to take, whether you understand it or not. But I do not go gladly. Only need drives me, which is what it says in the prophecy. It's not just like tactical or strategic or something. It's not like he's like saying a magic spell to make the dead rise so that he can take them and sweep across the whatever, you know, the CGI goofy CGI ghosts like crawling all over elephants. Like it's not about that. It's about the need that he has that helps him fulfill this prophecy.
I love it. Gimli's like, hey, I hope these dead guys haven't forgotten how to fight, or else I don't really see what the point of troubling them is. And that's where Aragorn gives this kind of the lore background that, and I don't think we should get too far into this, but essentially these are the men of the mountains who, when Sauron was, you know, bearing the ring, he kind of overtakes Middle Earth and he becomes like the king of Middle Earth essentially. And there's really nobody who can stand against him until the Númenóreans find out that there's someone who claims to be the Lord of Middle Earth, and they come and they kick Sauron's ass. The Númenóreans are so powerful that they defeat him in battle and take him back as a captive to Númenor. And so these men in the mountains who had been, you know, serving Sauron are kind of just left behind, and they don't see these Númenóreans again until Sauron orchestrates the fall of Númenor.
Right.
And Elendil and his sons come and claim kingship over Middle Earth. And when they do, Sauron has, like, his spirit has sort of retreated back to Mordor, and he's sort of gathering back up his power. And so these sons of Elendil, they start calling on the people in the area, and they're like, hey, you have to support us in the war against Sauron. Mm-hmm. And they swear an oath to Elendil to come to their aid. But whether it's because, you know, they were sure that the Battle of the Last Alliance was going to fail, or they were afraid of Sauron because of this like past history that they had with him, they don't come when they're called. That's the oath that's broken. So this goes all the way back to the Battle of the Last Alliance and even before. And it says that Isildur, he carries this, like, you know, big stone called the Stone of Erech from Númenor. And it's enormous. I mean, it's like twice the size in diameter of, you know, a man standing. So it's like, what, like 12 feet, give or take, in diameter. He somehow carts it back from Númenor and puts it up in these mountains. And that's where they make their oath. But it says that Isildur, when they refuse to answer that call, he stands at the Stone of Erech and he says, thou shalt be the last king. And if the West prove mightier than thy black master, this curse I lay upon thee and thy folk, to rest never until your oath is fulfilled. For this war will last 3 years uncounted, and you shall be summoned once again ere the end. So we have all this background, and Aragorn does this battle cry. He says, "Come to the Stone of Eric. I seek the paths of the dead. Come with me, who will." And they ride off.
Isn't it kind of funny that he says this battle cry like he's like alone in the hall with Legolas
Yeah.
and Gimli?
Yeah. Yeah. He's like,
And
"All
it
right,
just
y'all,
says,
let's
it just
go."
says, it's so funny because it just says Legolas and Gimli made no answer, but they rose and followed Aragorn from the hall.
Yeah.
Now maybe the hall is full of guys, I don't know, but in my mind it was just the three of them in there, and so it just struck me as kind of funny that he's like yelling this battle cry.
It says that they leapt away, riding down the coombe like thunder, while all the men that were left on dike or burg stared in amaze. So they're just this like formidable force riding. And they ride and they ride and they ride, and they get to the Golden Hall. And that's where we get this, like, you know, sort of awesome exchange with Éowyn. I mean, Éowyn is such a great character. She's down bad for Aragorn, but I mean, everybody's down bad for Aragorn.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, who isn't? It says, Lady Éowyn greeted them and was glad of their coming, for no mightier men had she seen than the Dunedain and the fair sons of Elrond, but on Aragorn most of all her eyes rested. She gives them supper, and they rest, and she's like, "Hey, you guys rest up. Here's some food, but tonight I can really not give you that great of accommodation, but like tomorrow I'll make sure that you guys have like better housing and you can rest even longer, and kind of basically like wait for Theoden and the rest of them to come, and we'll make our plans." And he's like, "Nay, lady, be not troubled for us. If we may lie here tonight and break our fast tomorrow, it will be enough. For I ride on an errand most urgent, and with the first light of morning we must go." And Eowyn's response is funny. She's like, "Oh man, did you come all this way just to say hi to little old me?" She says, "It was kindly done, Lord, to ride so many miles out of your way to bring tidings to Éowyn and to speak with her in her exile."
He says, I mean, like, Aragorn's such a smooth character. No man would count such a journey wasted. But he's like, that's not why I came here. I came here because I'm gonna go to Dunharrow.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, the dead do not suffer the living to pass. So that's a dumb plan. Don't do that." She's like, "It's madness."
They may suffer me to pass,
Yeah.
but at least I will adventure it. No other road will serve. And again, she's like, this is madness. He's like, no, it's not madness. I have a path appointed.
Yeah.
So again, he really believes in that prophecy. They just eat together. It's interesting that other people are kind of observing them.
Yeah.
Others saw that she was in a great torment of mind. And so they all kind of like, it's almost like a politeness. They are like, well, maybe we should leave so they can have a little more privacy here.
Yeah. Like I can tell, even though, Elladan and Elrohir are here too. So they're not like, they know that, Aragorn is not ever going to be with Éowyn,
No. Mm-mm.
I started to mention earlier though that you can read in this sort of an earlier draft of Lord of the Rings where Arwen was a very late addition to the drafts.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Really, Arwen doesn't come into the picture until much later, which kind of explains why she has such a small role in the Fellowship of the Ring, especially. That's partly, I think, why she like doesn't have much to say or do in the Fellowship of the Ring.
That's interesting. He just needed to like establish that she existed.
Yeah. It was kind of a retrospective, and the initial plan was for Aragorn to marry Éowyn to sort of combine Rohan and Gondor.
Oh, okay, so that would sort of, I mean, was he going to marry her in this book, or was he going to marry her like afterwards?
Like when the way that Faramir marries Éowyn, and that's kind of the like melding of Gondor and Rohan.
Yeah,
that was like the initial plan for Aragorn. So you can see it. I mean, there's like deep like romantic energy between the two of them. Much more, I would say, than is described between Aragorn and Arwen. There's lots of like gazing and pining and begging, and you can see. I mean, there was that line in the Two Towers where it's like, "And that is how Éowyn, shield maiden of Rohan, first beheld Aragorn, son of Arathorn." It's like got that kind of like he's clearly setting it up for them to be together. which this always confused me as a child. I was always like, how, like, why is Aragorn wasting his time with Eowyn? Why is he stringing her along when, like, he's going to be with Arwen, you know? And that's kind of the short answer, is that was the plan.
It also feels like sort of just like a noble politeness. You know what I mean? Like,
And it's like realistic. It's like, yeah, like he could just be a knight who marries this, like, shield maiden of Rohan. He could have done that, but and he would have been happy, but he has a higher calling in his life. She begs Aragorn to let her ride with him to the path of the dead, even after she tells him that, like,
it's a
he and everyone that's
mistake.
going with him is going to die.
Yeah, right.
She's her commitment to Aragorn is really beautiful, and she casts it as like, I'm tired of skulking in the hills. Like, I'm tired of being left behind. I wish to face peril in battle.
Shall I always be chosen?
Yeah.
Because he says you were chosen to stay here, and
Yeah, and it's a high honor, and you gave your oath to protect the hall
right.
while Theoden was gone. He charged you to govern the people until his return. But yeah, that shall I always be left behind when the riders depart, to mind the house while they win renown, and find food and beds when they return.
Yeah, and he says, a time may come soon where no one will return.
Yeah, and then
you can strive without valor or renown, for none will remember the deeds that are done in the last defense of your homes.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, for all of Tolkien's like inability to write believable female characters.
Well, but then, and then her answer is, all your words are but to say you are a woman.
Yes.
And your part is in the house. But when the men have died in battle and honor, you have leave to be burned in the house, for the men will need it no more.
Oh.
But I am of the house of Eorl, and not a serving woman. I can ride and wield blade, and I do not fear either pain or death. And he asks her, what do you fear? And she says, a cage.
So he
Tolkien gets it. Like, there's a big part of Tolkien who understands that being a woman in this world is not so great.
And in his world.
Exactly. And I was just going to say, and in his world, he understands it. I think these couple pages are like devastating, actually.
Yeah.
To read. It makes me really emotional to read. I think it's devastating because I think it gives voice to a feeling and a situation that countless women could utter these words, not just, whatever, the princess of Rohan. But I'm really glad it's here because, well, in some ways, because it sort of saves some piece of Tolkien. You can kind of point at it and be like, look, like,
it's not just Shelob.
It's not just Shelob. Like, there is another person here, and she's one of the most excellent characters, certainly in Return of the King.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go on record, say she's my favorite character
in the whole book.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. I love it. When
she cast down the Witch King, but things like this too. I'm also just a real sucker for like unrequited love.
Yeah, me too.
She says, like, they go only because they would not be parted from thee, because they love thee.
Yeah.
And then she turns and vanishes into the night. And that's her saying, like, and I do too, you dumbass.
Yeah, you bastard. Well,
she comes the next morning and she's dressed for battle. She's clad as a rider and girt with a sword. So she's like, I'm going to give you one last chance. Take a look, bud. All right. Let me go with you. Let me forsake my oath to Theoden. Let me ride with you. But he refuses. And he says, farewell, Lady of Rohan. I drink to the fortunes of your house and of you and all of your people. Say to your brother, beyond the shadows we may meet again. But she says, Aragorn, wilt thou go? And he says, I will. And she asks one final time, she says, then wilt thou not let me ride with this company as I have asked? He says, I will not, lady. For that I could not grant without leave of the king and your brother, and they will not return until tomorrow. But I count now every hour, indeed every minute. Farewell. So, I mean, this gets back to oaths again. She made that promise, and he's not going to let her make the mistake of breaking it. But she falls on her knees and she asks, so how many times has she asked now? It's at
Yeah,
least the third
it's
time.
the
I
third time
beg
at
thee,
least.
beg thee. And he says, nay, lady. And he kisses her hand and springs into his saddle and he leaves. This description I think is beautiful. I'm just going to read it. But Eowyn stood still as a figure carved in stone, her hands clenched at her sides, and she watched them until they passed into the shadows under the black Dumaberg, the haunted mountain, in which was the door of the dead. When they were lost to view, she turned, stumbling as one that is blind, and went back to her lodging. But none of her folk saw this parting, for they hid themselves in fear and would not come forth until the day was up, and the reckless strangers were gone. So these guys are so formidable that people won't even watch them leave because they're like,
Yeah.
these like knights and these elves. It's probably only the second time these people have seen an elf.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if they saw Legolas before. And these elves are a little bit, I don't know. I feel like they're a little bit more elfy than Legolas in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
Just being sons of Elrond, you know?
The rest of the chapter moves like so fast. It's kind of incredible how little time is actually spent in the Paths of the Dead. They ride and it seems like there's just a short distance, but they come to this door, and it says the company halted. There was not a heart among them that did not quail, unless it was the heart of Legolas of the elves, for whom the ghosts of men have no terror. And Halbrand says, this is an evil door, and my death lies beyond it. I will dare to pass it nonetheless, but no horse will enter. But Aragorn, with his, high noble will, is able to convince the horses for their love of the rangers to bear them through the door.
I really think the will is important here. The strength of his will in that hour that all the Dunedain and their horses followed him. Because we've talked before about how the ring, gives you power of command, but I think it, like increases your ego. It gives you, it like makes your will irresistible to others.
Yeah.
And obviously if, Aragorn had the ring, he would become incredibly powerful, but he already has a strength of will and a spiritual ground that is so strong that even these horses will, follow him.
Yeah, and his commands, yeah.
And I love this detail. Indeed, the love that the horses of the Rangers bore for their riders was so great that they were willing to face even the terror of the door, if their masters' hearts were steady as they walked beside them.
Yeah, yeah. I love the image of Gimli kind of shaking in his boots and being like, here's a thing unheard of. An elf will go underground and a dwarf dare not. And he's, he has to drag his feet, but he still follows after Aragorn. I said earlier, I think I kind of misspoke, actually. I said that because you were talking about Aragorn, even without the ring, he has this like strength of will. And I said, that he has the strength to command, which he does, but no one here is going in because he commands them to go. In fact, he consistently tells them they don't have to.
Right.
They go because they love him.
Yeah, Eowyn's right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. They're compelled by their love, not by any, compulsion or command, which I think is really beautiful. So they go into this darkness and they hear endless whispers of voices all around them and a murmur of words.
That's scary. I don't like it.
No tongue they'd ever heard before. And as they're walking up, they're full of like dread and heaviness. And it says they come to a great empty space where there were no longer any walls upon either side, but something glitters in the gloom. And they draw near and they see, when they hold up their torches, that there's a man. He'd been clad in mail and still his harness lay there whole, for the cavern's air was as dry as dust, and his hauberk was gilded. His belt was of gold and garnets, and rich with gold was the helm upon his bony head, face downward on the floor. And before him stood a stony door close fast. His finger bones were still clawing at the cracks. A notched and broken sword lay by him, as if he hewn at the rock in his last despair. That is terrifying. It's this guy, he dies and he's like trying to get into the door and he's like clawing at it, like
Did he
as he
like have?
dies.
Did he like? I mean, who is this person? He's
So
dressed like a king.
yeah, Aragorn says, "Hither shall the flowers of Cymbalmina come never upon the world's end. 9 mountains, 7 there are now green with grass, and through all the long years he has lain at the door that he could not unlock. Why would he pass? None shall ever know." So I think that it's implied that it's one of the Rohirrim,
Yeah.
maybe even a noble person among the Rohirrim, because he's talking about the mounds of the kings. So yeah, I'm sure that in the lore there's some explanation of who this is, but it's just a deeply strange kind of aside, this description of this person who died trying to do what they ultimately do.
Is he killed by the? I wonder if is he killed by the ghost, or does he die of like terror? You know.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like the ghosts themselves are not able to do any bodily harm to anybody.
Yeah, they just terrify people to death somehow.
They just like scare you to death or cause you to kill yourself in your fear.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
With this, it seems like he says he was still clawing at the cracks. A notched and broken sword lay by him as if he had hewn at the rock in his last despair. So it's almost like he's like trying to get in until
He's like has a heart attack or something.
yeah.
Or he's trying to get in, and yeah, it's really mysterious.
But it's a mystery to Aragorn too. He goes like, "None shall ever know, for that is not my errand."
Yeah, whither does it lead? What's behind this door? I want to know too. That's the beautiful thing about Lord of the Rings are these questions.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's like, "Keep your hoards and your secrets hidden in the accursed years. Speed only, we ask. Let us pass and then come. I summon you to the Stone of Eric." So that's like basically like kind of like from the rest of it, we only get a couple more paragraphs of like the time in, we don't get like descriptions of what they look like. We don't get descriptions of really like much of like what it's just terrifying. They're moving through the dark and it's like, time feels like elongated and they are just edging up against madness because of their fear. But the strength of Aragorn just like pulls them through and the dead follow them. He says, "Though for all that he could tell," this is Gimli, "it might have been twilight in some later year or in some other world." So this is just like an endless, passage that they're going through in darkness, and they're being terrified by these ghosts, and it's a real trial for Gimli. But they get to the other side, and it says the company now mounted again, and Gimli returned to Legolas. They rode in file, and evening came on in the deep blue dusk, and still fear pursued them. And Legolas looks back and he lets them know. It's like almost like Legolas is able to see what others aren't.
Yeah.
He says, "The dead are following. I see shapes of men and of horses, and pale banners like shreds of cloud, and spears like winter thickets on a misty night." And Elladan, who is also an elf, son of Elrond, says, "Yes, the dead ride behind. They have been summoned." And so they ride through these vales who have like little hamlets of men. And as they ride forward, these like 34 or so people, they're terrified because they see where they're coming from. And this is not a place that people go. And they can sense the terror, this shadow of terror that falls behind them. And the lights in the houses go out and people run in terror back inside their doors, and they cry, "The king of the dead has come upon us." And they ring bells far below, and everybody just flees before this host. And that's when they arrive at the Stone of Eric. So the men of the company come and halt there in the dead of night. And Elrohir gives Aragorn a silver horn and he blows it. And it seemed to those that stood near that they heard a sound of answering horns, as if it was an echo in deep caves far away. And Aragorn dismounts. Standing by the stone, he cries in a great voice, "Oathbreakers, why have ye come?" And a voice was heard out of the night that answered him as if from far away, "To fulfill our oath and have peace." Aragorn says, "The hour is come at last. Now I go to Pelargir upon Anduin, and ye shall come after me. And when all this land is clean of the servants of Sauron, I will hold the oath fulfilled, and ye shall have peace and depart forever. For I am Elisar, Isildur's heir of Gondor. And at this, Halbarad unfurls the great standard which he had brought, which we are not able to see because it's black, and the night is black. And there was silence. Not a whisper nor a sigh was heard again all the long night. As the sun rises, Aragorn rises himself, and they leave that place in great haste. And it says, the journey of great haste and weariness was greater than any among them had known, save he alone, and only his will held them to go on. I think there's something really profound about that people who have endured hardship can lead people through it. He's like a guide. He's like, I've touched weariness like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've survived. And because of that, I'm able to be a guide through this, terror. Something really profound about that. They ride on, towards where the Corsairs are. And it says, the next day there came no dawn, and the great company passed on into the darkness of the storm of Mordor, and were lost in mortal sight. But the dead followed them. Whew. What a great last sentence.
Awesome.
This chapter is a banger.
It's very epic. It all gets very epic.
So I hope you'll join us next week for Book 5, Chapter 3, The Muster of Rohan. As always, if you want to help us out, the best thing you could do is subscribe. Follow us on any of the platforms that you use to listen to your podcast. Follow us on YouTube. Leave us comments. Write a blurb for us on Apple Podcast. And if you want to learn more about us, you can always go to waywardwizards.com. You can also email us at info@waywardwizards.com.
And until next week, we go on a path appointed.
Bye-bye.
Bye.